We are answering all of your questions
about Flash Brewing Kits. All right, hey everyone, thanks again for asking all your questions about Flash Brewing on our last videos. I'm sitting here with Chris Graham, who helped design these kits, so we're gonna answer all of your questions that you had about Flash Brewing. All right, Chris, so the first question we got was, can you double dry hop this beer? DDH, can you DDH it?
Of course you can. So first off, we built this type of brewing for the new brewer involved. And we wanted them to have the best chance of making a good beer right off the get-go, take out a lot of the variables that lead to bad beer. So this platform is just something you can play with. You're an experienced brewer, you want to double dry hop, not a problem. You might need to buy the extra hops, you might want to control the timing. In fact, in some of my experiments, I've actually not added hops on the brew day. I've waited till fermentation subsides and then add the dry hop. So these are all things you can play with.
Yeah, I think the instructions, they say add them right up front. And again, to your point, ease of use. We want this to be easy for new brewers, right? So, but yeah, as an experienced brewer, have fun. All right, Chris, so this next question, they said, did you wait for the hops to drop or did you give it a swirl? Same question for the yeast as well. So everything kind of falling out.
So one of the areas we find with new brewers is if they are stirring, they are now adding stuff into this, and the risk of bacteria contamination is huge. And so we started experimenting like, hey, what happens if you just let it sit there? What if you let the malt sit on the top where it looks terrible? You think like, oh gosh, this isn't gonna work, but what will happen? And sure enough, it just self-hydrates and it goes into suspension. Then we tried that with the yeast right in that same mix and it worked. So you don't have to. And for the new brewer, we don't want you to. You're experienced. You can do whatever you want. You want to swirl a carboy. You want to actually sanitize. Please sanitize a spoon or whatnot and try to, minimize the amount of splashing and whatnot that you get in there. Go for it.
So what about like post-fermentation? So now we finished, you've got kind of your hop islands on top there. I think that's where they're kind of going to, like
got
at
it.
the end.
After fermentation, most of that should settle out. Like, after a week to a week and a half, 99% of that should be settled out. So I'm not sure I would be doing any stirring at that point on any beer.
Yeah, let time, temperature, and just the conditioning itself do the work for you.
Exactly.
Okay, so next question is, can you play around with fermentation temperature control? The Flash yeast says it has a wide range. So the question is, what is the optimal temperature range? Can you play with it in general?
No. No,
right,
you cannot. Of course you can. And the beauty is, we worked with different labs, different yeast strains, and we've tested a bunch of them. And we just were trying to isolate a strain that starts fast, drops pH fast, has nice flavors, and can handle a large range. So in our experiments, we have gone 60s to 90s with good success at each one. Ideally, if you got an area that's in the 70s, I think that's your happy spot, just like with most ale yeast. That's your happy spot. But if you don't have that, for that new brewer, this is perfect because they can handle if it goes up there and not make a ton of fusel alcohols.
All right, so Chris, the next question is, how long do these ferment out? I saw some comments on there like, brew a beer in 10 minutes, no way fermentation obviously fermentation takes longer than 10 minutes, guys. We're the brew day. So how long does it take to ferment out is the question.
It can take 1 to 2 weeks is what I typically tell people. But what I love about this yeast is that it's a fast start, small lag time. And, because we're not boiling, it's a risky proposition of what's competing to ferment this beer out. And you don't want the bacteria to do it. So this yeast has a very quick lag time, drops that pH, puts you in a little more safer area. And almost every experiment I did, I saw signs of life 4 to 6 hours. Definitely by the next day, full fermentation set on. And usually, especially when I was in the higher temperatures, 3 or 4 days, almost done. And testing that gravity-wise was definitely on the downslope. And then, but if you want clarity, you kind of have to wait a little bit. And if you're bottling, you kind of need to bottle in that sweet spot where you still have some yeast in suspension. But if you're kegging, you can go a little bit longer as long as you're in a good environment. And then you'll pick up some clarity that way and keg it.
Yeah, I see this just like regular, extract and all grain brewing. Flash brewing is the same rules apply as in patience is a virtue, right? Let it go at least 7 to 10 days. That time is going to let those flavors mature, and you're not going to have a green beer. Sure, you could turn it around quickly, but yeah, you let it do till it's finished and give it a couple extra days. I think is going to give you the best beer.
Exactly, and it's like any beer. This isn't trying to be like, oh, we have a whole new method from A to B. No, this is more like A. The brew day, all grain brewing, extract brewing, getting up to a boil, chilling the wort. Those are time consuming processes. And really what we were trying to see is, can we actually eliminate those? And I think we've successfully done it, making a quality beer that isn't going to replace those things. But for that brand new brewer who we've specifically designed this for, it handles that perfectly.
All right, Chris, the next one is, what is your favorite style to flash brew? I'll answer first because I know I've done the same one twice now, which was the Citrus Session Pale Ale, which is just a style I like, kind of lower ABV, hop bite, pun intended, I guess there. Yeah. Hop bite, yeah, hoppy. So that's my favorite style.
I think that's mine too. And I think it's really, thinking about someone trying to make that first beer and trying to make it come out good and trying to have their friends drink it and say I love that beer. That was wonderful. And I've done it for a few events, camping trips, 4th of July parade, things like that, where I've made Flash Brew kits for them. And people have been like, this is awesome. And the Citrus Session's a huge hit for me, especially on those days where you're gonna have a few of them and they're not that high alcohol. But right now, with this particular yeast strain, we're really targeting those pale ales, IPAs, anything in between, where you're just kind of a clean, neutral flavor and it comes out just the way you want it.
All right, Chris, so this next one, they said, are these similar to fresh wort kits, which I think it might have inspired kind of this whole thing, but let us know about
Of course.
What a fresh wort kit is for those that don't know, and then, is there similarities?
Yes, and these are similar but different. Fresh wort kits are where, and popular in some overseas places, and where they'll do an actual batch at a brewery of a large scale, and then they will run the boil a little bit longer to basically concentrate that wort a hair. And we're not talking malt extract, but a little bit, so maybe you're saving 10% or 15% of just having water in there. It also ups the sugar, so it's a little more protective for shelf stability. But the hops are already in there, everything like that's already done. Then they can sit in these head pack jugs that they try to fill at a boil or close to it without much oxygen in there. And we looked at this and watched our friends who are doing this. They love them and their customers love them, where they can come in, pick them up, and bring it home and brew, or add water and add yeast. And we love that concept. What a cool way to do it. But there's a lot of challenges to that. First off, you're shipping water, and water is heavy, it damages easily, and they're not really doing a ton of shipping as much as people coming through and picking them up. And there's some other concerns with that process that our lawyers were a little concerned about too, in terms of 100% guaranteeing there's not certain organisms that are living in there. So this method, also similar, to where you can make that batch fast, and that's the whole goal, is not a lot of hassles. You spend more time looking for your fermenter than you do actually making the kit. Make it fast and not have to do a whole lot of work. That's where they're very similar. How they're made is a little bit different.
All right, Chris, the next one is in regards to water profile. So they ask, if they're using RO water, should they add some sulfates if it's an IPA, or, et cetera, things like that? Do they need to mess around with the water?
Well, that's truly spoken like someone who knows what they're doing. And again, these kits were made for new brewers. So let's talk water chemistry in general, and there is some differences. So our preferred method is that you take bottled water, or if you have RO at home, and add that. Then you're clean, neutral, no problems, it works great. That's our recommendation. Now, avid brewers know that, yes, I can tweak, modify, whatever. I would say the batches I've done, I haven't done any of that. Been very successful just using RO water because I have an RO system. And you're getting back from the malts some of these properties back in that you're looking for, mineral additions and whatnot. Now, there's even some things that have already happened to some brewers because of their knowledge. And what happened, and one of them was someone took city water, added a Camden tablet, and then had a very metallic beer at the end. And the reason being is they didn't boil afterwards, because these are no boil kits, but that's part of, if you're using Camden to remove chloramines, you gotta go through that boil to drive that all out of there. So that's where it's almost like we're all a little too dangerous to start adding our salt packets and this, that, and the other. We'll keep experimenting with that in terms of truly trying to lock it in. But again, the purpose of these kits is to make quality, drinkable beer. We're not trying to replace all the knowledge we have. So feel free to incorporate what you have, but be a little bit careful when it comes to the water chemistry side.
All right, Chris, so another one that came in, which I think a lot of people are asking about, are we gonna do smaller sizes, 1 gallon kits? And then, kind of on that same, since we're talking size, some people said, can they split batch and do a 1 gallon and dry hop it, et cetera?
Well, let's answer one at a time.
Yeah.
The various sizes, yes. Our goal is to get down probably to the 1 gallon, probably a 2 or 2.5 gallon, where it just makes sense. And again, for the new brewer, we are working on some cool kegging kits that would fall in that size. And so they'd be able to keg right off the get-go easily, hopefully relatively inexpensively. Hopefully these can be on shelves out there where it's easy to people to buy gifts for, just like you see Mr. Beer and all the other various types that people start on. We want to get people into a kit that when they give it to their friends, they say, hey, that's pretty good, as opposed to, oh, I've had homebrew before, my friend made it and it was terrible. That was the intended goal. So yes, we will go smaller once we perfect everything at the 5 gallon size. We did the 5 gallon size because that's what we know. In terms of splitting it, I wouldn't. We will be working on that, but some of the ingredients are gonna be hard to split and to know you truly got the right amount. We've really worked on, and my business partner Olin really dialed this in, working with many manufacturers of different components to really get that right ratio of things. And while eyeball, you might be like, well, I used half of it. You might get a good result, but you might get 2 very different results when it comes to IBUs or whatnot between the two, because even if you're off 5% or so, which is hard to see with your eye, it's gonna be off. So it depends what your purpose is. If you're just having fun, absolutely. But if you're trying to make 2 of the exact same batches, it might not come out that way.
All right, Chris, so the last question we got, and I think it's probably the most important, how the heck do these taste? So I've brewed 2 of them now, and they're both tasted good. They're gone. I don't have them anymore, so they got drank or drunk, if you will. So yeah, I think they're pretty good. Love my all grain beer, my double decoction lager and stuff like that. But yeah, I was pretty impressed. But what's your take or your answer to this?
So I will answer this the easiest way, since we're talking to an informed audience. You're an informed audience, blah, blah, blah. I've made some, I think, pretty darn good beer with it, and I've made some bad beer with it. And I think those were the variables of me on some of them more than they are the style. Just like I've made good all grain batches and I've made some okay all grain batches and extract as well. So keep in mind, this only replaces the one sliver of your start, not the fermentation, not the packaging, not any of those. So it's hard to say you're guaranteed. We're just doing our best to reduce the issues that we think caused people to make not so great beer on their first one. I've entered this into a national homebrewers conference, and my goal was to get a 29, because that for me is a solid beer. It is not getting blue ribbons and this, that, and the other. It's just a solid drinking beer. That's the goal. It got a 34, and amongst multiple judges, not like one. Mm-hmm. And that really made it valid for me that you can make a quality beer in there. Now, I have access to a Brewbill X3. I have a glycol system. I have this, I have that. I actually didn't do temp control on it, but I did do it in stainless, which can minimize oxygen pickup and things like that. So you can use your tools that you know how to make good beer, and these can come out even better by utilizing those techniques. So something to add to the flavor. Those of you who do all grain and did extract, you saw a pretty big flavor jump when that happened. You're probably not going to get past the extract, the best extract you can make doing it this way, because you are not doing nuanced things like, during the saccharification rest, are you on the high side or the low side? Are you able to add, 0.5 of a pound of melanoidin to get that little extra slick feel in the mouth? And those little tricks you can't replicate on this scale. But we're really going for I want a beer that I can share with my friends. I don't want them to hate it. I don't want it to be bad. I just need a solid beer. This is the style that makes that solid beer. And so for me, I can be brewing an all grain batch, clean one extra fermenter, and while I'm cooling, just quickly make this up. And now I have that second beer. I have the one I'm probably most proud of, that it came out of there. And by the way, my all grain didn't score nearly as high as my Flash Brew did, so I'm a little embarrassed by that one. But again, that's where it's not just about the brew day, it's about the whole process. And we're just trying to mitigate those issues that can happen, but those issues still can happen.
So totally agree, Chris. Some of the comments I've seen that were interesting to me, like, this is a great way to have beer in between beer, or I've fallen out of brewing and this is a great way to get back. So, what do you think?
100%. So the intended audience is the brand new brewer. The next intended audience, which might actually be bigger for us, is all of our customers who we've met over the years. I mean, literally thousands of people who life has changed. And whether it's they've gotten into a new hobby, they had kids, they moved, they did this, they did that. We all have done it. I've done it in my brewing cycle of homebrew like crazy and then kind of move on. And you want to come back. Maybe you just want to dip your toes in it, have a beer you made to be able to share with your friends. And then you're like, whoa, that was pretty good. I know I can do better, so I'm going to get fully back into this hobby. But anything to kind of help people just enjoy their brew day again. That's really what it's for.
Yeah, I think especially from an equipment standpoint, when you get into extract brewing, you've got the boil and the fermentation is your equipment you need. When you get into all grain now, you have the mash side. So you have all this. This actually just brings it over to the fermentation side. So it's, a third of the equipment you would need.
And really, like you talked about the boil, but a lot of people, especially when they're getting into it, don't realize there's something between boil and fermentation called chilling. And that can be
That's true, yeah.
a huge part of the danger zone where people are picking up bacteria. And
time sink as well.
Time sink, money sink. So really that was one of the key areas, was how do we have this highly vulnerable area where the worts still say above 100 degrees, meaning any bacteria that's in there, which there's some after that, has a higher ability to start working than yeast does yet. How do we reduce that? And that's kind of where we fell in this of like, let's try to do this to where that gets eliminated completely.
All right, thanks everyone for your questions. If you have any more questions, leave them in the comment section of this video. Also, there's a link to our Flash Brewing Kits and also our Q&A page on Flash Brewing. Thanks, and see you next time.